Hey everybody, I'm Ben, and today I'm going to take you through the way that I set up a people so that I have a kind of cheat sheet for them if I am going to be writing about them or if I am using them in a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. I can sort of drop these things into it that I already have prepared. It's just kind of a simple thing of filling out simple things just to have them written down. But obviously, you can change them, adapt them, that sort of thing, depending on what you need for your story. So, what I like to do when I am beginning with something is I like to think of, and this is just me personally, you can come at this from any angle. I like to form an image in my mind that I then have to justify. In the game that I DM, that we stream, the first group that I actually made, the first country, was a religious theocracy that's king is a incredibly powerful warrior. He's not picked for that reason, but he basically has to be. I generated him because I thought of an idea where there was a man in this huge, massive set of armor made with bits of dead dragons holding an amazing warhammer, and he is surrounded close by nothing but priests, monks in long robes, and then beyond those priests it's nothing but farmers dressed as farmers. And I had to come up with, so why is this what the king looks like? Why is this? I don't know if that idea was a coronation ceremony. That's something that I still haven't decided. I don't know if that scene has actually ever happened. Certainly not the current king. That was not his coronation, but doesn't matter. So today I wanted to create people based on another idea that I had in my mind, and that was the idea of a scholar, young man dressed in these sort of heavy robes, like think the Ottoman Empire. He is very put together, very polished, and he is sitting out just on a plain, on a step, and he is surrounded by children who are dressed in the clothes of a nomadic people, and he is pointing up and explaining some details of the stars. And I think that he tutors them, teaches them. This is something that it is his purpose, at least for now in his life, that he is going to be going out to tribes and helping to teach the people that are, in a technical sense, not his people, but in his worldview, in his mind, they are. And so I decided that I was going to create a nomadic country. They probably would not consider themselves a country, but a nomadic group that are sort of loosely aligned, and that there would be a settled city that had existed for hundreds of years that has a relationship that is a give and take between the city and the nomads. And so I decided to do something that I like to do when I make countries, peoples, cultures, where they are based on sort of multiple real-life things that are from the same area, but usually are not from the same time. I think that it's really fun to make like a kingdom that is based on, the Visigoths are one of the large groups, but then you also have, Renaissance France. You have, not Renaissance, but you have like your main conflict in that area is the Huguenots versus the Catholics. Except, if it's Dungeons and Dragons, it would be the people who worship dragon god or the people who worship an elven god. But you can kind of do anything to your heart's content there. So I decided to base the bulk of this idea on the Scythians, and I'm using Wikipedia just to illustrate a few ideas. I've kind of made some decisions for what I'm going to do, but I'll make a couple in real time, so that'll be fun for everybody. I decided to keep the Scythian page right here because we need a name for these people. And I think that we have kind of our two answers right here. So I like Sake and Askuzai. I like Sake for personal reasons and Askuzai because I think that it sounds really interesting. It sounds very unique. So I think we're going to call them the Sakuzai. Sakuzai. So the name of the people is the Sakuzai. Then, oh, that looks terrible. We need a name for the place. So we have the Pontic Steppe. So we know that it is the Eurasian steppe. So I think that the point of, in your document, the document that I have here, the name of the land should be the name that these people call it. Because what you are basically creating, if this is for Dungeons & Dragons, is a guide for yourself in how to keep a level of narrative consistency when people from this area come up. So whether another part of the world, they will probably have another name for it. I think this steppe where these people live is going to have something to do with the Pontic Steppe, and then I just saw it, and I saw the Ordos. So I think we're going to call it the Orntic Steppe. I decided on Sakuzai before I started recording, but the Orntic Steppe, that was my brain firing off straight to the top. And then I have 3 sort of segments. Obviously, you can edit this, change it however you want, but I think that the loosely defined government section is the one that is, that's where you're going to have your quick draw stuff that you need to bring in. The culture, that's the sort of fun bit where you get to define these people's daily life. And then story is the part that I actually find the most fun from, not exactly a creative perspective, but how are you going to use all of this going forward? So our government. So our structure is going to be... I guess I'll go ahead and say this because I knew that I wanted to say this at some point. When you are creating a new culture, you are likely going to base it off of stuff in the real world. And it's good to be kind of as respectful as you can while also bringing in sort of new ideas. Going with the Scythians as our base is kind of a little bit, we can run up against some stuff because most nomadic people, their tradition, their history was oral. So most of our written sources are people who lost wars to them. And since, we like to say that history is written by the victor, in the case of nomadic people who were able to basically defeat everyone around them, war ended up being written by people who they made vassals for a time and completely resented them. So most of the records of Scythians are going to include this sort of brutalist nature, and we're going to be largely sticking away from that. Every culture has a history of brutality. Any time that any, group has gone to war, it's been brutal and disgusting and bloody. So I don't think that we are not creating a villain culture who the nearby people are going to be so nervous to be nearby. But another thing that you are going to run up against if you are using specifically ancient cultures is that there are going to be different ideas. So the Scythians, they are, from some sources, they are fiercely patriarchal in a way that a nomadic people really would not have been based on most other nomadic groups, or they were a complete matriarchy, and I think that we're going to do something a little bit in between. So there is a queen within the city. There's a queen within the city who is the one who essentially makes decisions for invasions. And makes appointments and settles tribal disputes. In the city, shares absolute authority with council. With the council, sure. So we have that idea. Then there is the fact that there are going to be... Blah. Let me take a step back. So we have this queen. We have a queen. Is this where it is? Yeah. The Katiari. So I'm going to put Katiari, queen within the city. So that is what the people will refer to her as, the Katiari. So she has a position of authority, but I've kind of talked about how in this country that we're developing, there is this individual city, and then there is the steppe surrounding it. So let's actually take a step back and make her a little less important. Let's define structure as sort of the area where you want to say how the country works. That's how I use it. And so there is the massive city of... And then, you know what? I don't have a name for this, so let's come up with it. Found at Kellermees Krasnodar Krai. Kellermeskaya. Okay, so we've got a place here. Early Scythian has a little bit of something to do with this. I'm going to say that our main city is going to be named Kostnodar. Kostnodar. So let's go ahead and put that in on capital. Kostnodar. So the... let's change you to normal text. And you also. You're going to be normal text. Guess what? Normal text. So the massive city of Kostnodar on the southeastern border pays tribute to the, and I need the name here. So I've decided to call the leaders of the tribes the Skolotai, which are the, which is the name of the warrior aristocracy caste. But I think that Skolotai is a good name. Pays tribute to the High Skolotai. The High Skolotai. The High Skolotai can be challenged. I think that it is essentially like you can issue a challenge and the Skolotai gets to choose. Challenged. The reigning Skolotai defines the terms. So that could be like a one-on-one duel. Could be a issue having to do with intellect. It could be like a game of chess. It could be a contest of archery where neither of them die. Could be a pitched battle between two different tribes. It just That's something that I don't think needs to be written in stone. I don't think that there would be a specific rule. I think it's more just like somebody just says, hey, I'm the High Skolatai, and then the next day another Skolatai somewhere is just like, actually, that is me. So what are we gonna do with this situation? Tribute, largely in gold, is paid to Skolatai and his tribe. Other tribes pay smaller tribute. Tribute largely in gold is paid to the Skolatai and his tribe. The other tribes pay smaller tribute. So that is paid. Essentially, how I envision it is that this city is kind of left alone. It's not under threat of being raided, no matter what the political situation is, because a great deal of gold is passed from this city to the High Skolatai. He's able to pass that to his warriors and their families. The other tribes would be basically given some sort of autonomy where they aren't at active threat of complete war. And let's go ahead and say that clan federations made up of tribal groups split largely by ancestry. So that's the idea that this is probably a pretty big place. It's probably a pretty big section of a larger steppe, and they call their section the Orntip Steppe. So you probably have a couple of different, slightly related ethnic groups that exist in this small section. And so the clan federations are probably made along those lines. So a Skolatai has command of their own tribe, but then there is likely a Skolatai who commands this entire clan. Then the High Skolatai is nominally in charge. I think that his power is very similar to the Queen in that respect, where by which it is like a system where everybody's kind of like, yeah, we'll listen, but not really. But then there will come times when something happens and his authority will be absolute, just like the Queen. So then we'll say High Skolatai rules mainly in times of the steppe facing war. So it makes decisions for, I'm not going to say invasions, I'm going to say raids, because I think that a lot of the tribal power is made by who raids the surrounding nations. Oh, capital, you should be heading. Oh, I gotta, hold on. There we go. Okay, so the High Skolatai rules mainly in times of the steppe facing war. So she would settle tribal disputes, I think, in basically if a war breaks out between two different clans or just two different tribes from different clans, she would get to have the final word if the people involved decided, you know what, we don't want to have like a pitched battle, let's let the Queen decide, so that, you know, maybe we have to pay you a ton. But yeah, and then I think tribes spend part of the year in Kostnodar. Okay, there we go. So we will have, for current leader, we will have both the Katiari and the High Skolatai. I have a list of Sarmatian names, and so I found Baragos is going to be our High Skolatai. High Skolatai, Baragos. And for our Katiari, let me scroll up a bit. Let's go with Lamea. Oh no. My mistake there. No, come on. Work with me here. Alright, let me get rid of you. Let me just undo this. Oh no. Oh god. And you just go back to having none. Based on that formatting. There we go. There we go. Oh, but you're in a different font. Oh, that's fine. What font is the rest of this? Arial. This is a very, I could edit this out, couldn't I? I don't think I'm gonna. Katiari. So now we have sort of the idea of there is a queen. Let's define Katiari is picked from priestesses available within the city. Anyone can be a, and we'll say anyone can challenge for tribal Skolatai, as well as the clan position. Only a Skolatai can challenge. So you have to be actively be a Skolatai of a tribe, or, I mean, reasonably you would want to be the leader of your clan, so that you would have authority by which to challenge the High Skolatai. So Kosnodar. Trade city for Eastern nations. Next to massive mountains. Bulk of gold. Bulk of golf in region. The majority of the golf in the region is played here. Bulk of gold in region. Produced. Smithed here. So Kosnodar is, I guess we could talk about the history. So I was thinking about the history, and we have people called the Yenisei Kyrgyz, and essentially they were a group that lived on the border of the Eurasian steppe with some of the more settled societies in Eastern and Southeastern Asia, and they began to mine for gold and goldsmith and smith it, and when the tribes would come around, they would just sort of pay tribute. So what I'm thinking for the history of Kosnodar is that there is a old empire in this world, and you can see when you start with one individual country and you begin to justify its description, you justify its existence, you will get a sort of interplay with other places. So there is a powerful empire. I think that it's pretty obvious that this would be a sort of Achaemenid Empire stand-in, or that would be at least where you begin, and then you develop it into its own thing. But so this city was established by that empire. By ancient empire. And is that empire still around? Is it gone? That's another thing to consider. But liberated by tribes. And then I think that we could say that maybe a tribes, one tribe who didn't have a lot of power at the time. Didn't have a lot of power at the time. They decided to inhabit it. Discovered the gold. Began current system of tribute. And so I think that a lot of warrior peoples, a lot of people where war is a big factor of their daily life, where men are expected to be competent in battle. This example that I'm drawing is the Anglo-Saxons, the Anglicans before and after they reached the Isle of Britain. They essentially had a structure where if you were in charge, you had to allow fighting. You had to give opportunities for your people to go somewhere else and kill people so that you could take stuff. that was basically their structure. Was we need riches won in battle. I must do this, and if they came upon like a cache of something, it was expected that would be allotted out from the top down. I think that the Sakuzai are not too different from that, where essentially now the Skolatai realize that by kind of following the rules made by the Katiari, they will be given this gold so that they don't come in and just take it. And by that happening, the Skolatai of each individual tribe or individual clan doesn't have to do as much. They don't have to sort of manage a larger system. They will still go and raid nearby places because, hey, that's more stuff. That's a more battle. That's more glory. But they don't want to upset this balance because essentially they're getting gold. Every few months they get a bit of gold. Other major towns or cities, I think there are small villages that are sort of cycled through in a similar way to Khosnadar. So let's define another city. Let's go back to where we saw that, and maybe let's find so yeah, you can see, I mean, I'm using Wikipedia and people say not to, but I am mainly this for what we're doing here. We're creating just sort of an idea, and then if you want to go deeper, you can draw on other more specific sources. I have other stuff for that I've already read for like the more individual stuff that Wikipedia doesn't really include, and I think that is important for you to do. Bilsk. Okay, yeah, I like that. So we'll say Bilsk. That is in the Ukraine, so that's a little bit of ways up. And then Myriv, ancient Scythian settlement in Ukraine. So let's call it Mailsk. Mailsk. So there is Mailsk. Largest town outside of city. Cycled through. I think it's cycled through as basically like a little period of time. You know what? Let's say cycled through for protection from elements. So maybe in the winter, tribes come and spend, like, each of them gets, 4 days where there is this sort of kind of semi-walled little town with a lot more life around it than just grass, and basically it's like we get our break now, and maybe that's where a lot of the disputes between tribes can start. Because I need to put in the structure. pastoral nomads. And so I think that the majority of the conflicts that would arise between the tribes and the clans... How long have I been recording for here? 30 minutes. Wow. This is a lot of time for me to not do very much. I think that they essentially would fight over that. This is the problem. I keep having these little bits where I don't say anything important. So let's kind of speed through it, I guess. Religious structure. Worship, Skyfather, and I'm not going to do any specifics just because, you know, I will probably use this because I like some of the ideas that I've made, but there we go. Worship Skyfather, ancestral reverence, so they do respect their dead, essentially. I can't spell. They respect their dead, and there is a bit of shamans in tribes and priestesses in cities commune with the dead. Local animism. So, like, places do have spirits and importance. Most important time of the year. So let's say that in early spring, because living out in the open, it is very difficult to survive the winter. Early spring, the tribes gather. Not all of them. Tribes, clans gather. A great feast, killing off the oldest sheep from each clan's pasture. Great riding tournament that usually lasts 3 days. So this feast would be essentially a celebration that they are still alive, and held beneath the walls of Kosnodar, right? Kosnodar, yeah. And so that is like, hell yeah, we made it through. With other living folk, and violence is prohibited, and you know what, let's say this is when new marriages are made. So that is essentially, I think that basically it's like, oh, you survived a winter, so you have a whole year to have a kid. Which, now that I'm thinking about it, I guess you wouldn't want to conceive your kid at the end of winter, because then you'd basically be born. This is when new marriages are arranged. There we go, because all the tribes are together, all the clans are together. You can sort of build like cross-tribal clan alliances. Yeah, I think that works. So daily weekly rituals. This does not mean we summon Akathul, the Old One, every Wednesday. This is more like, you know, if you are creating your nation, your country, based on, say, some European nations, it might be smart to include that there is an expectation that you are going to go to church. So for these people, for the Sakuzai, I think that the daily weekly rituals. So I haven't really talked about horses, but as a nomadic people on a plain, the horses are very important. I think that entire family washes all their horses, because it's likely that they would have individuals horses together every Let's pick a day. Every Tuesday. Every Tuesday. My world, the days are the names of the real world because I want, cool swords and the gods to have interesting names and mythologies. I don't, it's August 12th. August 12th was the day that Ezekiel raised the sword of Naya and struck down the Defiler. It was August 12th, 3 o'clock p.m. Entire family washes all their horses together every Tuesday. Offering made to recent dead every Friday. So basically, anybody who died in the last couple of years, I think that you would... And an offering doesn't have to be offering or prayer made to the recently dead every Friday. So I think that basically, between the work that the people would be doing, they are... between the work that they would be doing, they would all take turns going and speaking to the shaman if they're on the steppe, or one of the priestesses if they are in the city, and they would essentially take some time to kind of... It would feel like talking. It would be like talking at a gravestone. I think that would be the idea. It's not a seance, even though I mentioned that the priestesses and the shamans would commune with the dead. It's more like, while you're here, can you just sort of be an in-between, and I'll just sort of, vent, mention, oh, I miss you, buddy, that sort of thing. So festivals, I think, holds a autumn festival. Where the Skolotai to prepare a small feast, and so I think that these are people, we're going to get into the food here in a second, but they probably have pasteurized, made into alcohol, horse milk. That is what a lot of places do. And I think that each of the clans holds an autumn festival, and there's a drinking contest. Just for young men. So I think that it's like you have just sort of been... You're a warrior now, maybe you can start a family. I think that it's like the idea that guys around this age, they do that. They are expected to do that. And I think that city folk prohibited from attending. And then let's make a festival for the folk in the city. So they worship a sky father. So let's say there is a festival on the summer solstice. Summer solstice. I don't know how to spell solstice, man. There's a festival to the Sky Father on the summer solstice. Summer solstice. Everyone wears brighter, finer colors. Attends the grand temple. So there's one massive temple in the middle of the city, and then there's a few smaller ones. Attends the grand temple. And what do they do at night? And all men spend the night inside, while women and those beyond gender have the city for their pleasure. So basically, I'm thinking of like the festival that Caesar comes back to in Julius Caesar, when basically all the men are supposed to be locked inside. I think it's like that, where it's just like women are out drinking, spending their time on the streets, getting into fist fights, that sort of thing. Daily clothing. So I believe I had it here. Central System dress was developed in response to their need to ride comfortably, yet survive in all weathers in a rugged environment. This part, I do not know how to talk about clothing. It's something that I have a lot of trouble with when I'm writing, so I'm just going to paste this without formatting for right now. The food, so this is where we can talk about this. So Turkish cuisine, that's important, because I think that the influence of Krasnodar is basically, it's like a Ottoman city, even though it's on the opposite side of where it would be. I think that you have the opportunity to sort of talk about the kind of food that your people would eat, and then you also have the chance to talk about the culture of food, which I put in relevance of food, but I don't know if that's necessary. Since we're kind of strapped for time, I am going to say let's just kind of do this again, and I'm sorry about that. We're not strapped for time, but yeah, we're not strapped for time. Table tells a tale of power. The city, it's at the head, and guests stand. They do not sit. So basically, like, a dinner is a special thing. And I think that it would be the choice of the woman of the house, whether a older guest or maybe a guest who is differently abled would be allowed to have a chair. But the kids, husband, they're sitting down. Somebody who lives in the house, they're allowed to sit down. The founding story, so 3 brothers and their mother fled. Let's make this like a big thing. Fled demon from the south. They came upon the steppe and saw he could not follow. There they were met with 4 stallions and 4 mares. These brothers would have many sons and daughters to become clan heads. The mother ruled from single house on the plain. So that's kind of like I think that's the story that they tell. The brothers would obviously have names. They would explain how each clan was descended from each brother. The mother ruling the brothers from a single house, I think, is probably a bit that was added recently with the development of Krasnodar as sort of this individual place. So it's kind of like hey, it's fine. This is how it's kind of always been. And they probably had before that, because women are important to the Sakuzai, that, she was probably an important figure in the myth. Mythic figure, let's go back to our names, and let's create Bazion. Bazion, the Unconquerable. So I think that this guy is probably based on a real figure. fought back the Eastern Empire. Hint, hint. Got them in the myth. So let's say that he's not actually, like, maybe in real life he was this great warrior, but in the stories he is a trickster figure who tires his enemies out. So basically he just engaged in all these stories. It's like he's like a roadrunner figure who, like, gets on his superior horse, gets the totally not Achaemenid Empire soldiers to chase him around maybe the gold mountain, the mountain with all the gold, and so they tried to chase him and just found that they couldn't, and they went home. And that is like that's like the way that the myth sort of applies the idea that he and his men maybe did a feigned retreat, and kept falling back, and then once they saw that their enemies were too tired, doubled back and basically just poured arrows into them, and then the Empire actually did hit a retreat, and the soldiers of Abrazion were very pleased with themselves. And he is a important figure. Okay, so tech. Not even going to explain this sort of part, but, you know, I guess I will. Horse's key, stirrups, saddle. So tech evolves at different... It doesn't even evolve. Tech, people make what they need. Different places have different technological needs. Different peoples have different technological needs. So what you want to do is you want to say, like, oh, in the daily life, what do these people need? And what they need are stuff for their horses, tents made to combat elements and wind. They probably have some sort of dragging apparatus for stuff. Dragging gear for stuff. And then inside of the city, I think from where they are now, you know, goldsmithing, untouchable. So they're amazing at goldsmithing. Nobody in the world is as good as these guys. And then, let's just say sewage. I like in Dungeons and Dragons, not in, like, any of the stories that I write, but in Dungeons and Dragons, I like to give cities working sewage just because, you know. And with the proximity to the maybe still around Eastern, not Achaemenid Empire, they would have some level of sewage. So, academic subjects, math is the big one. I think chemistry, I think that would be interesting. And then poetry. And let's say astronomy, even though that's kind of in the blanket of math. So I think they like poetry, so our guy here, maybe he writes poems about the stars, and that's why he's telling those children about them. He's taking a break from explaining math. Crafting, goldsmithing, obviously. I've made that pretty clear. Goldsmithing, let's say weaving. They weave their clothes, they don't sew them. I have no clue. I have no clue if that is important. I have no clue if that means anything. And then iron working and basket weaving. I like basket weaving. Jobs. So these are sort of, this idea is that there are things that you know, a society allows its people to do and have a sort of position of authority. So let's say the law speaker. I always include law speaker. That's a lawyer, you know. If those tribal disputes happen in front of the queen, who's going to do the talking? That's one position. Hunter, shepherd, cook. I think that they probably have large communal meals for the tribes. Cook. I think there's a sort of general repair person who kind of goes around, like, patches tents. Fletcher, Smith, Goldsmith, trainer. The trainer would train horses. And then all of these people, men and women, are expected to have some time where they do go and fight. So the historic founding, so that is different from the founding story. So basically just horse peoples invaded, rebelled, took city of life, secured by being unpopular to invade. So I think that basically different groups have come in here. Whereas people's invaded, rebelled, took city. I think that basically, they are unpopular to invade because if you come in, they will kind of just like run away. Like they just won't engage your army if your army is too big for them to handle. And then you will face the entire group because that is where the Skolotai has dominance. And then you either lose or they just realize, oh, you're still too big. All right, we're just going to harass you until you leave. We're not going to fight you. We're just going to, our horses are faster. We know this area better than you. It's very difficult for you to conquer this area. And then winter is super harsh. The aim of those in power, city folk want to unite tribes and create a better defensive structure within 2 generations. Begin conquest. Because if you basically spend about, say that you unite these tribes and the people who are just children now grow up, setting up a sort of system by which the country can be defended. This steppe, which is currently not really a country, it's just a area where everybody else is like, yeah, that's one group of people, and to these people, that is not true. They are very different groups. You get these people together, you say, hey, we're one place now, so that you have to get over that. Then you convince the current generation to train their kids to defend. The generation that those kids produce would, from a point of this structure by which that you are expected to raid and get stuff, there would probably be a desire to go raid, and so that would turn into, instead of just small groups going to border villages with other countries, with other states, it would instead become, I am going to, we're going to invade you, and now you pay us tribute all the time. Aim of other groups. I don't think that there are really other groups. I think that for factions, so this would be like if you have like a resistance group, or you have like maybe a religious group that wants to supplant the monarchy and replace it with a theocracy. But I don't think that really applies to the Sakuzai. And the factions, I think it's, for this group, it's just, let's say there are 6 major clans, 2 minor clans, and many tribes within each. And I think that'll do it. So I think, obviously, when I use this, because I like a lot of what I've come up with here, I will use more stuff. Like, I'll be more specific. I will definitely have other things. I would have more like a list of people who are in power. So I would have like maybe Badagos is just a amazing warrior, but he's actually from one of those minor clans, and so all of the major clans hate this and are trying to get at him. And there's one clan that is just nothing but people, the millions of people, and that Skolotai is just like, I could basically I could turn this into a war instead of a personal challenge, and I could be the highest quality. And so then you would have something like that, and I would want to have that guy's name so that if my players or if my characters in a novel that I'm writing go to that place, I just pull up this and I say, oh yeah, that's my man Chopra. That's what he's doing. And then another thing that I don't have, but I would include, and I should add it to my main template that I'm going to make available when I tweet this and put in my YouTube description. But I would include essentially what the ideal is for these people, what the ideal life is, because in our modern day, there is not really a shared ideal, at least not in America, where I live. There is the idea that there is one. There is the idea of the American dream. So what do the Sakuzai, or what do the people that you're creating, what do they want? What's the idea? Is it marriage and kids, and say every little Sakuzai kid dreams of having their own 3 horses, so they never have to stop riding, they can just cycle. Something like that. What is the economic status that is generally hoped to be attained? And obviously that is not a real thing that everybody is going to agree on. That's just an idea that everybody kind of talks about as it is a sort of idea. What thing, when you become a parent, this is a better way to describe it, I think. When you become a parent in this culture, what do you suddenly hope that your kid has? Your economic ideas for that kid are going to be different. You want them to have a level of stability. So what is this idea of stability that is not just economic, but within the culture that exists? That's really what you want to have. Okay, that's gonna be it. So this is the Sakuzai, and I will now put that in. Sakuzai info. And thank you for watching. If you would like to use this, it will be available, this template. It's not very flashy, but it's there if you want to use it.